What is up, everybody, and welcome to the All NBA show powered by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com/AllNBA. I'm your host, Adam Mares. I am not joined by Tim Legler today. You guys know he is road tripping it up to his summer home. Sounds nice. He will be back tomorrow, but I am joined by one of my favorite basketball analysts on the web. Something I share in common with one, Tyrese Haliburton. It is, of course, Caitlin Cooper of the Basketball She Wrote Patreon. Caitlin, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm very happy to have this invite, as you are also one of my favorite basketball analysts on the internet.
I think you got voted MVP. I'm like Tyrese Haliburton. I got voted most overrated, but I'm going to show them. I'm going to show them the truth. So I want to ask you, we've known each other for a while now. You've been covering the Pacers. You cover it like no one else because a lot of people will do basketball analysis, X's and O's. You, over the years, you were good when we first met each other, maybe 5 years ago. You were very good. But I feel like you have become full galaxy brain since then now to where I wonder, do the coaching staff ever reach out and ask you for advice?
No comment.
There you go. That's absolutely incredible. She really is that good. If you're not following her on social media or more importantly on her Patreon, very affordable Patreon. I subscribe myself. She gives great X's and O's. And as you will see, as we do this interview, she knows her stuff. So I'm going to ask you this. The Pacers are not necessarily a legacy team. And so it's always different when you get a run 2 years in a row. Last year, you got this, felt like a Cinderella run, although I want to ask you about that in a second. And then this year, you get the run to the finals. Just what has it been like following this team as it's evolved into this and now getting the payoff of getting to see it all come together for them and reach the NBA finals?
This season's a little bit different than last season because it feels like nothing about it has been normal. The way that it started and the way that it transformed mid-year. And then also just this team barely ever plays normal basketball games. As
Yep.
people who paid attention in March, they were basically having their own March Madness, which somehow continued to carry over into the playoffs with some of these finishes they've had, which speaks to their adaptability in a lot of ways because of how many different ways they found to win in those situations. So
Yeah. And I'm going to ask you about the abnormality and adaptability because that might be the buzzwords of 2025 in the NBA. It might be where we're headed. But, as I was thinking about this, so last year they have the Cinderella run and they make it to the conference finals. And then this year it's another run where when people were picking, it's the Cavs and it's the Celtics and everybody else punching up. But as it's played out, there's always the health factor you have to factor in, and you have to kind of be lucky in some ways at how things shake out. But when I watch how this playoffs is unfolded, hindsight's 2020. I don't feel like there's anything strange about this. When I watch, I go, I think the Pacers are the best team in the East. They are phenomenal at solving problems. They have a lot of very smart, versatile players. And so as I've watched it play out, I watch this and I go, the Pacers are a juggernaut. It wasn't a word we were using to describe them 2 months ago. Do you agree with that? That you watch them play at this level where it's about problem solving and you say, yeah, this team got here because they're really good at this.
they are able to take a lot of different, I call them shape shifting and what they do offensively, which is probably what you're referring to here too, because
Yeah.
I kind of looked ahead at and watching the Knicks play the Celtics and the Knicks trying to switch against the Celtics and me being like, the amount of ball movement the Pacers have with their willingness to go switches, with their willingness to just stack action after action after action. A team that's not very familiar with switching was probably going to struggle. And not only that, but you could see like, oh, the Knicks are going to go big. Well, the Pacers will just play inverted spacing and space both of those bigs, Cat and Mitchell Robinson in the corners, and they can run pick and roll between the three guards. You're watching Andrew Nembhard and Tyrese Haliburton and Aaron Nesmith running actions. This is also a basketball team. Another one of the aspects that I enjoy about them the most is how much they're willing, not just their spacing that Rick Carlisle optimizes, but how much they're willing to make space for each other, even in key moments. Like when you watch that overtime win in game one over the Knicks, one of the possessions, it's a full court play, a sideline out of bounds play, and Tyrese Haliburton and Pascal Siakam are standing on the logo. And that's to create a 3-on-3 for Andrew Nembhard, Obi Toppin, and Aaron Nesmith. They had a 1-point lead in overtime, and their two stars are standing on the logo to create space.
Yeah.
So when you have that type of buy-in and trust amongst the entirety of that roster, it makes them be able to do a lot of different things to put opponents in difficult positions, and they take advantage of what matchups in front of them.
What's funny is I'm not sure it's even buy-in, because I think for a lot of players that is sacrifice, right? You're a decoy, go to the logo, create space. But for guys like them, and I feel that I'm speaking personally from how I played basketball, that's not a sacrifice. That's part of the game. There's almost something fun about tricking your defender into being out of position. And that's the way that the Pacers play. Everybody is doing things that might seem less honorable or might seem less fun, but I don't think they're less fun to those guys. I think they enjoy problem solving, and sometimes problem solving is being out of the way.
And that definitely starts with Tyrese Haliburton, right? Because if you look at the entire Cleveland series, Andrew Nembhard ran more pick and roll than Tyrese did. Tyrese is being face guarded by Okoro and Max Strus, and when you watch him throughout the season, he's been very much like, 4-on-4 is good for us as a basketball team. Like, there were possessions where he was in the corner with his hands on his knees, and the Pacers had stacked 4 actions in a row with 9 seconds left on the clock, and Obi Toppin's getting an open 3. I refer to him a lot of times as negative space in art because he adds contour, even when you're not necessarily seeing him as the central focus in plays. And so I think that kind of carries over. Like I said, I think when your best player's willing to do that, everyone else falls in line as well.
Yeah, and it's not even just the willingness. It's I think there is something fun. I feel this as a basketball player. I felt it. I'm an old man now, but I felt it where there's something fun about watching a play unfold where I know I tricked my guy into being in the wrong spot. Even like, it might just look like you're standing in the corner, or I set a flare screen on the opposite side and then somebody else scores. And it's like, well, you didn't do anything. I was like, no, you were out of position because you thought I was doing something over here and it dragged you out. And the entire roster is guys that seem to enjoy that aspect of the game. And it gets me to my central point here on the Pacers and why I'm so fascinating about the series is they have a group of guys that not only like doing that, but can do it on a very complex level. It's not just about getting into a corner, not just about setting the weak side screen or diving to the rim. They stack actions on top of one another, sometimes 4 things in a row: flare screen and a slip, turns out to the other side, exit screen, and then a handoff. And they do one after the other. And it's not like it's a drawn up play. It's a sequence of reads that the entire team has to make together. And my question for you is, in the playoffs, there's no basketball like it. You have to be extra focused. The regular season you get through and you build on. Do you feel like this Pacers team, with the thing we're talking about here, stacking reads on top of each other, that they have gotten better as the playoffs have gone on, as the intensity has picked up? They have now operating at a level that they were not at 2 months ago, even though they were good at this in the regular season.
Yeah, it's interesting because, they talk about it a lot that they want to play random. They prefer like what they call pace after. Obviously, they want to play with pace and get opportunities in transition, but what are they doing in the half court after that? Some of the players on the roster are a little bit better than others, and that's in part why at the beginning of the year when Tyrese was somewhat limited, they had to mesh both sides of that, especially like three people like Pascal, Benedict Mather, and Jarris Walker play slightly differently than what Tyrese, Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nembhard, Obi Toppin play, and having to blend those 2 types of things together. And you're seeing it come into play in the playoffs. And I think some of it goes back to, and it's not going to make sense because of what you just said, like Rick Carlisle for a long time had a reputation as being a play caller, and they still will call basic actions. You can see them signaling them from the sidelines. But when the first option gets taken away, and the second option gets taken away, that is up to the players on the floor. But I think that a lot of it, because I've seen them run drills at practices where they're practicing playing random, if that makes sense, so that they know if this happens, then this happens. This is how, like, a big word that I would use is they call it blur, but I would call it a ghost screen or reignition. They know places where, like, we need to set a guard screen to get the offense back going, or we need to go into split action to get the offense back going. And so I think it's really almost a testament to coaching, honestly. Like, when you have a team that can continue playing when a play breaks down, that almost says as much or more than designing a really fancy set, in my opinion.
And that's how you win in the playoffs, because as much as you would love to script, I almost think this is the difference between a team like Minnesota and even a player like Anthony Edwards, as great as he is. You go into a game and a team has a game plan and it throws you off. And then you go into halftime and you drop the counter. Like, okay, here's what they're doing. Here's what we're going to do to counter it. Then you come out and maybe you solve it, maybe you don't. Then the next game, there's an adjustment and it catches you off guard. The great teams and the great players are the ones that don't need the halftime. They don't need the in-between games. They are reading it and they're starting to figure out, oh, they do this, we do that. And I think, and I'm curious what you think about this, because Denver obviously is a read and react team as well. So I watch it closely. early on in a season, you do script out the action. Hey, we're going to ghost this screen, or we're going to flip this one, and we're going to do this. You draw it up, and it's the same action, but we're doing a different type of screen on each one. But as the year goes on, that becomes a feel. So it's like we ran this, we called it as a play, but now you know when a guy overplays, you're going to slip here and you're going to do this. And I think that's what you're talking about with Tyrese Haliburton. He's probably comes into camp with this brain. He knows how to read these things immediately. But if the team's not reading it, he doesn't look as good. Over the course of calling plays, eventually those plays just become reads and you can change it on a dime.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you can even see that in game at times with some of the stuff the Knicks were trying in games 5 and 6, because they had adapted and finally started face guarding Tyrese with Mikal Bridges in game 5, and they were putting OG Anunoby on Andrew Nembhard, which was the first time all season that I've seen a team put their strongest link on Nembhard and be ducking under against him while at the same time they had a defender face guarding. They even mixed in some possessions with OG onto Tyrese, which they weren't doing early in the series. And as soon as they knew that, it's like, oh, well, we had been running like 11 double drags in a row to get Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns in action. And now that OG's here and he's pressing Tyrese up to the left side of the court, Tyrese is going to get off the ball really quick. He's going to skip it to Miles, make it a get action, and still be able to get downhill with OG instead getting pinned by like a rip DHO. Like, he's very good at what you're saying, and the team responds in kind to knowing, okay, the coverage against Tyrese just changed at the point of attack. The defender just changed. This is what our response to that is.
And that comes from repetitions throughout the course of the year. Like you said, those things might be called. You draw a timeout. Here's what we're doing. But when you do it enough and the team is locked in enough, then we don't need a timeout. We know this is what they're doing. This is what we do in these moments. And when I say stacking complexity, and we're going to get to the abnormality of this here in a second, but there was a play you highlighted in your article, your most recent article, and you actually made a separate point, but I'm curious if you can follow me on this one. So they're going to trap Tyrese Haliburton. And I believe it was the Knicks. If they're going to trap Tyrese Haliburton on like a guard to guard screen, most teams, that means you're going to ghost the screen and release the guard to the open side. And then you just pass because that guy's open. Well, if that guy is somebody you don't want a steady diet of 3-pointers, like that's what teams will do. They'll say, oh, we'll dare Lou Dort, for example, to take 6 threes in a row because we're going to leave him open. And you don't, even if he makes them, you don't want to play that way. Well, Haliburton's smart enough to know, okay, they're going to trap me. I'm going to kind of back up here and draw the trap out. They're going to recover, but they're not really recovering. They're going to try to trap back to me as soon as I go. So rather than leave him there, I think it was Neesmith, but I'm actually not sure. And he says, dive, get yourself into position now so that when we play 4-on-3 behind this, we're already in our spot. Nobody has to cut and everything else. Everyone get to your spots. I'm going to draw the double team out. So now when I release and it's 4-on-3, everybody's where they're supposed to be and we're already set up. That's the type of advanced stuff where 99% of point guards, 99% of teams, they just pass to the open guy and then try to play 4-on-3. He sets the table and says, okay, I'm going to hold you guys with me. You stay in the trap, get in your spots. Okay, now attack. And it's a layup. And the Pacers do this over and over.
And that's something that, like, if people remember the in-season tournament against the Lakers were one of the better teams in the championship against the Pacers at blitzing Tyrese, because when you have Anthony Davis on the court, you're either having to get a hang time pass up over his hands, which allows the defense more time to recover, or you're having to read him as the backline defender rotating to the rim. And that then became a trend. More teams were blitzing Tyrese, and he himself talked about it at the time, like, I need to improve my timing for determining what degree is this defense committing to me? Are they going to leave after, 1 or 2 dribbles, and reading that? So that's something that came with time. And the Nuggets blitzed Tyrese a lot in the game in Denver. And a point I've made many times is like, yeah, Tyrese might have had less than 10 shots in that game, but when he passes out of a blitz, the Pacers score more points per chance than the most effective pick and roll offense in the NBA.
Right. And that's the game, right? It doesn't matter how it happens. It's, hey, you're going to do this. This is our best option. And I'm going to set the table, even if I don't get a stat. The Pacers are just so good at it. The last thing before we get into this matchup, you have the jump passes are good now hat, which you've popularized, which is obviously about Tyrese Haliburton's propensity and ability to jump in the air and manipulate the defense. Luka Doncic is great at this. There's a lot of guys that are really good at this. I think this year, Haliburton has been good at this, but I think this year he might have moved to number 1 jump pass maker, because he's not just jumping, freeze the defense, throw it this way. He will jump in the air. Like, he'll shot fake. He had one the other day where he shot faked, then faked to the corner, and then dropped it off to, I think it was Turner at the rim, who just kind of catches basically an alley-oop. And that was like a 3-part jump fake. It had 3 moves. It wasn't just 2, freeze and go. It had 3 different things to it. And to me, I think he's even Luka Doncic, I think, might be a step below his ability to manipulate the defense in air with fake passes and find the guy.
He's abnormal in a lot of ways. I refer to him as a basketball counterculture a lot because as a point guard, like he glances out before he glances in. And normally you would read the defense in the reverse of that. So that then opens up rim passes for him. And I've seen him make jump bounce passes. Like that's not an angle that somebody normal should really be able to conjure. But the thing that you're talking about there is it's twofold. Like Tyrese is different because he's not jumping because he ran out of he's jumping because he has an idea, not because he ran out of ideas. And he also, while he's not really like a plus athlete necessarily, he has a decent amount of hang time where even if he does get in the air and his first read isn't there, he can scan and make like a triple read before he reaches the ground and still find the next thing. But yeah, I mean, clear back when I wrote that article, it was his first 26 games, and I was like, this guy jumps a lot. And when I counted the potential assists, as I recall, it was like 3 times the normal rate when he jumped versus when he was on the ground. And while the turnovers were slightly up, it's like if you can get this assist rate and this amount of like, I think sometimes he gets this reputation because of the low turnovers that he's a safe passer. This person is not a safe passer. Like, and especially with how quickly they play in the open floor too, and how many hit-ahead passes he's throwing, the low turnover rate doesn't make sense. Like, it's really hard to comprehend how he accomplishes, and it's very important that he accomplishes it because their low turnover rate is very important to their defense, which I'm sure applies to this matchup in many ways.
Yeah, so we can get into that. I think that that's his signature play, though. By the way, the jump pass. Not every player has a signature play, but I think his is the jump pass because of how well he's refined it into a weapon. So now it's like when he jumps, you have to be more on your toes because it's like, what's he doing? What's he trying to do to me? So now let's get into this matchup because it is, to me, these two teams mirror each other and that they're almost the exact same in opposite form. And you talked about this yesterday. I don't remember if it was on Twitter or it was part of your article, but this is a very abnormal finals in that both teams thrive in abnormality. And one of the things that you highlighted was Oklahoma City will bring Hartenstein, their center, and say, hey, you're not guarding the center. We're going to put you on not just a good guard, but a skilled guard. And it's almost like they're going to trust the rotations behind it, but they're also, neither of these teams want to just get a steady diet of post entries. So you're not really worried about the mismatch post entry. And they'll do things like that to just put teams in awkward positions. The Pacers obviously play very abnormal in the opposite direction. So what all is abnormal? Like, how are they flipping the game on their head for both teams?
There's a lot of diversity to the way that they play on both ends of the floor. And OKC's standpoint, they've defied convention on the defensive end for a while because they're able to be successful gambling because they are so locked in with their help coverage and they are able to overhelp. Hence why they're packing the paint and why Tyrese's, percentage of his touches that are in the paint, percentage of his touches in the restricted area, his drives have been so much lower against OKC than overall against the other 29 teams in the NBA. But like you said, they're willing to cross match. Like I hadn't really seen a team put a big onto Aaron Nesmith or in that game, Jarris Walker since last year against Milwaukee when the Bucks were like, we're kind of out of options. Let's see if Brook Lopez can kind of hang out on Aaron Nesmith at this point in time. They tried it in part. Chet Holmgren hasn't played in either game against the Pacers this year. Hartenstein ended up missing that second half. And coincidentally, the Pacers, actually, the Thunder were playing with no centers, and that's actually when the game got out of hand. The Pacers tried to play small with them, and that's when they really started getting rolling. But, yeah, there's going to be a lot of abnormal cross matches. I mean, I shared a possession last night where literally Hartenstein has spent not as much time on Miles Turner as, like, most of the guards and forwards have. It seems to my eye that the Thunder is going to be very comfortable cross-matching with Miles so that they can switch stuff between, Tyrese and Andrew as ball handlers. But Hartenstein's mainly been on Pascal. He was on Pascal. Carson Wallace was face guarding Tyrese out of a sideline out of bounds play, and Tyrese has become a more physical screener. It'll almost look like he's pushing a football sled to try to sandwich his guy. So he's going to go set a ball screen for Pascal is the ball handler, and Andrew Nembhard's a stack screener. And I'm just like, what am I watching? Like a center is the on-ball defender. Pascal Siakam's banging in a pull-up three. Tyrese is the ball screener, and Andrew Nembhard's leaking out. Like, this is not normal stuff that could potentially be transpiring between these two teams. And I know OKC fans were quick to point out, well, like Chet would have been out there, not Hartenstein, and they might go super small. And that's true. There's a lot of lineup versatility there, but I think that's kind of what you're looking at it too, especially because, well, we might get into this a little bit later, but Miles has been great shooting the ball from a lot of spots on the floor, but he's shooting a career worst between 3 and 10 feet. So if you're the Oklahoma City Thunder and it's, one of their stockier wings or guards and you can push him into that range, I don't think the Pacers are going to want to live on, his turnaround face up mid-ranger from between 3 and 10 feet. If they are, that's the optimum outcome, I think, for the Thunder on a possession.
And sometimes the series comes down to something like that, which sounds silly. I know Denver beat Utah in the bubble back in 2020, in large part because they made that bet with Gobert. They were having a hard time getting spread out, and they said, well, can Gobert make a 5-footer? He'll make the dunks, but what if we just force him to shoot floaters all game? And ended up turning the series. So sometimes it's something like that, letting the center roll to the rim, catch it, but we're just going to keep him outside the restricted area, and we'll see what happens. Here's the thing. I think the Thunder are heavy favorites in this one. I mean, Vegas has them. This is a matchup of Indiana's able to be as abnormal as possible to solve whatever problem the defense throws at you. Oklahoma City is as good defensively at being able to play pretty much any style with any type of matchups and rotate. And they're so physical and they're so fast on those rotations that I do think this is problem creation versus problem solving. You could almost define this series as that. But I think the problem creation from Oklahoma City, there's just such a depth to it, a physicality and a speed. And that's why I think they're going to have the edge. But one of the things that gives them an edge there is they have perfected legal physicality. And what I mean by that is I think the NBA right now allows a lot of contact on a stationary player. So if you give it to the post or you give it to the elbow, you can kind of just be as physical as you want with the guy. And if you try to back him down, same thing. You can still be very physical. It's when you face up and have a live dribble that it's like no contact's allowed. Now everybody has to be off. Oklahoma City, Shai is always faced up and he always has a live dribble. So they maximize that. Indiana is similar to that. And so I'm curious if you think the physicality is going to bother them the way it has bothered every single team they've played all year long. Or Tyrese, Haliburton, Nembhard, these guys are good at facing up and keeping a live dribble. So do you think that physicality and that pressure on ball is going to be a problem that Indiana struggles with?
Probably depends to a certain extent on how much Tyrese is able to be the bring up ball handler, how much, like, part of the way they were able to crack the pressure so well in game 6 against the Knicks, which the Knicks ball pressure is not going to be close to what Oklahoma City did.
Not even close.
But part of the way they were able to do that is with the advance pass. The Pacers throw more hit-aheads than any team. So if you can get it up over the top, they probably feel better about it. But if they're pressuring Tyrese a lot, which I suspect that they will, I think that the matchup will be Lou Dort against Tyrese. And that's more going to Andrew, then that's going to replicate some of what I was just talking about with OG Anunoby. Like, they can put another very strong link onto Andrew in ways that, like, when he's playing Cleveland, he was being guarded by Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell. It was easier for him to get downhill, to be compensating for some of the physicality. And that's where, like what you're saying, problem creation. The OKC is kind of an amalgamation of the things from each of the prior 3 series, like the little things that cause nagging problems for the Pacers. They can kind of do all of them. So if Tyrese isn't able to bring the ball up, then that is something like when I'm talking about him having to push guys as like he's pushing a football sled. That's how he's going to have to get himself open in a lot of cases. And that didn't pay off super well for him in the game in December. He wasn't very involved while Lou Dort was guarding him, which means the offense is going to have to shift in other places. And then if you're also cross-matching against Miles Turner and that's being switched, then that option isn't readily there. So then, like, it could be a really big Siakam series because he might end up being the person that they need to enter more of the offense to, just because he might be the person that has more of an advantage.
Do you see them putting Caruso on Siakam in these spot minutes? I mean, he's going to foul. He's going to give his 5 or 6 fouls in every single game. But is that one way to mitigate that, is to say, hey, if you're the release of Siakam, just hound him. Don't let him get any momentum.
That will probably come down to how willing are the Thunder to play double big, and is there an advantage to them playing double big? To this point in time, the Pacers won the minutes when Brook Lopez and Giannis were on the floor. They won the minutes when Evan Mobley and Jared Allen were on the floor. And I think they broke exactly even when Cat and Mitchell Robinson were on the floor. If they're willing to play double big, I think that Siakam's going to be really successful against a 5 cross match. But like you said, they have a lot of other options they can throw on. When the Pacers played the Bulls, Caruso was always the person in the let me bother Tyrese role for 94 feet, and he was successful at it. But the Thunder have way more people who can try
Yeah.
to replicate that role. So I know from people who covered the Bulls that Caruso guarded up a lot. Obviously, did that some in the last series, even on possessions against Julius Randle. So that's why I said, like, every time you think of like, oh, this is something that the Pacers could go to if they try that, I think of another defensive thing, like another form that the Thunder are going to be
Yeah.
able to take on. So
Yeah. And the double big part of this too, Turner has struggled with the defensive glass, and
yep.
Hartenstein to me is every bit as good of an offensive rebounder. He doesn't always do it because he does a lot of things, but in this series, I have to imagine if I'm Dignot up, I'm saying, hey, grab every offensive rebound when you're out there because that's a weak point for them, and we can get second chance points. Do you see that as a weakness? And is that a concern you have going into the series?
Yeah, I mean, there's that one really standout possession in the Knicks series where Miles Turner was having to face up to box out Mitchell Robinson, and he didn't see the drive behind him because he was paying so much attention to that. I mean, flashback, game 5 in the Knicks series last year, Isaiah Hartenstein had 12 offensive rebounds against the Indiana Pacers and 17 for the game. I'm sure he remembers that too. And for the Thunder standpoint, like, this is a team that's, number one at creating turnovers. The Pacers are very good at limiting turnovers. If you're not going to have quite as wide of an advantage in the turnover battle, then loading up on the offensive glass makes more sense to you. And I've told people for a long time, the best way to limit the Pacers' pace is to crash. Like, conventional wisdom has said for a long time, like the Doc Rivers mentality going back to Boston, like, well, we're not sending anybody unless you're already in the paint. Everybody's going back. I thought that was very much to Milwaukee's disadvantage because they weren't stopping the fast break anyways.
Right.
And then they weren't generating any second chances. And the crashing, because the Pacers are not the best defensive rebounding team, also actually makes people have to stay rather than just getting to leak out. And then they're just, full force with Tyrese being the author of the offense in the open floor. So if I were the Thunder, I would be crashing as much as I could because I think that would stop them, and they have to feel really good about what their half court defense is. So
the thing about that, the offensive rebound to transition defense, that balance is such an interesting one because it can snowball in either direction. You start grabbing a bunch of offensive rebounds, it snowballs favorably. You don't, and now you are vulnerable to those transitions, and it can snowball the other direction. So to me, the Pacers, I think it would behoove them, in my opinion, to punish that and to force them to be a no rebound team. Because the Thunder win in large part, their defense is great, but they win on offense because of all the steals they generate, second chance points. They win the possession battle. If you can take that away, I think they become pretty pedestrian offensively. And then you're talking about, hey, even if we're getting scored on a little bit in the half court, we can beat them with everything else that we do. And that would be a big one. The last one I have for you, and I'll let you get out on this one, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. We're going to talk about this on the other side. His line for points per game in this series is 33.5, which I think would be as high of this playoffs. And I get why, because I'm not sure that Indiana is going to be able to slow him down. What is the key? Who's going to guard him? And how is Indiana going to keep him from kind of getting what he wants in this series?
That's going to be a big philosophical question, I think, because when you look at the prior 2 rounds, look how they guarded Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson. Like, it was framed in a lot of cases as they didn't have anybody who could stop Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson. And obviously Andrew Nembhard was tremendous defensively in game 6. That was the best defensive performance I've seen from a Pacer since I've been covering the team.
It was unbelievable.
But if you look, especially what they did against Cleveland, that was deliberate. Like, they knew, because Cleveland's so good at rotating and cutting around the pick and roll, they completely removed their nail help. They're like, Darius Garland's out. Donovan Mitchell's not the most creative passer. They averaged fewer closeouts in that series than the team that ranked 30th in that category. They stayed home. Right. They took the obvious passing angles away. That led to more usage for Donovan Mitchell, and a lot of times Donovan Mitchell ran out of gas by the end of the game. They did similarly to Jalen Brunson, where, the Cavs were averaging fewer passes per 100 in that series than the team that ranked 30th. Right. So they lost a lot of the lyricism of Cleveland's offense. They had a similar effect, though somewhat different, against Brunson. I don't think you can do that against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think he's too dynamic of a driver for you to get away with not guarding him with multiple people. And the Pacers have been a team that don't show a lot of help on drives typically, and that's been a trend and how they were able to, knock off Cleveland and then get over the top of the Knicks. But they've shown more against Shai in the regular season. I think it's going to be Nembhard. He had by far the most possessions against Shai in the 2 games. The only other person that even had over 10 was Ben Shepherd. Like, it's going to be their two best point of attack defenders to try to stay in front. And people might think this is somewhat strange, but I think the most important other person in trying to contain him is going to be Pascal Siakam, because Pascal's most likely going to guard Lou Dort. So, or whoever the weakest shooter on the floor is, that's who Pascal's going to guard. And he's going to have to be really excellent in the shadows, looming, providing a presence to try to deter him from getting into the paint. And that's been his more natural role. We haven't seen it a lot in the last two series because he needed to guard Karl Anthony Towns. He needed to guard Giannis. But part of the reason why the Pacers defense turned around in the way that it did is because of the strides that he made defensively, especially their pick and roll defense, is because a lot of times he's behind the pick and roll, providing another goalie, even behind Miles Turner. So I think Pascal is going to have to be like, if he's kind of the forgotten piece in extent because he's going to have an advantage offensively, he's also going to have to be excellent defensively. So that's kind of where I look.
It is tough with Shepherd. I love Ben Shepherd. I think we talked about this early in the year. I like him, even though he's probably the 9th best guy in the rotation or something, 9th or 10th, but I still like him. But him and Nembhard both, as great as they can be defensively, Shai is so good at just, oh, you're an inch too short, so this shot is easy for me. And I worry both of those guys might be that. What I find interesting about what you said, though, is I actually expect we see both. I think we see games where Shai goes for 45 points because they're saying, hey, we're not going to allow this other stuff to happen. In games where maybe they pack the paint, try to hold them to 20, 25 points, and other guys get shots. I think you can't allow both. You know, the big thing is you can't allow a healthy rhythm to bounce back. You almost have to go all in on one direction, all in on the other. Some teams, what they'll do is they'll go all in on one direction for 3 quarters, and then the 4th quarter switch it up so that one of those things is out of rhythm. I just don't know that any one of those strategies works against Oklahoma City. I think you have to try to catch them off guard, and that's why I think the Pacers will probably do both.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things quietly with regard to the Shai conversation is that the Pacers, if people, heavily watch that Bucks series with AJ Green screening for Giannis, I swear that was the most lethal action that the Milwaukee Bucks ran. OKC runs more guard screens than any team in the NBA. So I'm just like envisioning a lot of inverted stuff and guard to guard screens where like Tyrese is up hedging and then that guy's leaking out and then the corner guy's having to commit. And it's what you said, like you might get the ball out of Shai's hands doing that, but then the defense is automatically into rotation. Like the Pacers have just had a lot of trouble guarding like slot flat guard screens. Sometimes it's like, and I don't know what you think about this, but like so much of the time, AJ Green was not setting a screen. Like he wasn't even approaching close. And it was like they were defending what they anticipated the action to be, rather than just being like, no screen, no scheme. Just follow him out to the 3-point line and square up the ball. So I'm be curious to see if they made any progress on that, because they didn't see a ton of that against New York. But that's another thing in the back of my mind. Like I said, the Thunder are kind of amalgamation of like, well, that was an issue against the Bucks, and that was an issue against the Knicks, and now it's all happening at once.
But I think the Pacers are the very best version of themselves on this date. They're better right now than they have been at any point in the season, and maybe those lessons have prepared them for this moment. The problem is, I think the Thunder are also the best version of themselves, and they won 68 games. So they're a heck of a team, and it'll be great. Caitlin, you're the best. You're truly the best. Everybody, make sure you follow her on social media as well. I can't recommend her Patreon. I am a subscriber. Basketball She Wrote with her partner. I got to shout him out as well. Samson Foka does great work for you over there. Anything else you want to plug before I let you get out of here?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Samson, because he and I have been doing YouTube shows after all these games where we're doing a lot of film study, and I'm really happy and lucky that he has time to be able to cover this team with me. I think he's one of the best writers / talkers on the internet. So if you want to, it's under my name, YouTube, Caitlin Cooper, subscribe over there. And if you sign up on Patreon, it gets automatically emailed to you as well. So
there you go.
There's the finals coverage.
You guys have great chemistry, and obviously you guys get into incredible detail about the game in a way that I just find so fascinating. It helps me prepare for this show, so I always appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time.
No problem. Thanks.
All right. Take care. All right. We're going to take a break now. On the other side, I want to take a look at quickly some of the odds in the finals, some fun prop bets, and what Vegas is saying they expect from the series and what that tells us about the series. We'll get to that on the other side. The NBA playoffs and the finals are just getting started, and there's no better time to experience the intensity in person, whether you're trying to catch your favorite team live or just looking for the best deals on live event tickets. Let us tell you about our friends at Vivid Seats. Vivid Seats is the best place to get your tickets for any game or show. They even have concerts and things like that, concert tickets as we get into the summer season. They have the best selection of seats, 100% buyer guarantee, and they're the only ticket marketplace that rewards you for every purchase. For a limited time, our listeners can use the promo code ALLNBA30 to receive $30 off their first Vivid Seats purchase of $300 or more. Just click the link in the show notes or download the Vivid Seats app and use promo code ALLNBA30 for $30 off your first purchase of $300 or more. And that's not all. For the remainder of the NBA playoffs, Vivid Seats is giving away free tickets every single week. Check out the exclusive Game Center in the Vivid Seats app and play NBA playoff picks for your chance to win. When it comes to playoff hoops, being there is all that matters, so experience it live with Vivid Seats. I also want to tell you about FanDuel. FanDuel is the best place to find all of your favorite player props, and now you can make the smarter play with new performance trends. You want to see if a guy's been hitting the over consistently, or maybe if they've been flirting with a potential triple-double. Get the latest stats right inside the app and see who's heating up. And once the game starts, that's when things get interesting. You can combine live prop bets into same-game parlay for a chance to win big. If you don't already have FanDuel, it's not too late to get in on the action. You can get started with $200 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/AllNBA to join today. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Must be 21 or older and present in select states, or 18 plus present in DC. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit fanduel.com/RG. Alrighty, back here, segment 2. I'm going to wrap up with a very quick segment here. Speaking of FanDuel, I'm going to look at some of the prop bets that I found on FanDuel last night that I thought were interesting. So as much as I love this series, and I do give the Pacers a shot in it, just because this is basketball, anything can happen, and I have a lot of respect for what they've done. But I have more respect for Oklahoma City and the defense that they have created and cultivated from the beginning of the season. They have been consistent with that defense across 82 games and now 3 rounds of the playoffs. And they obviously have a player in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that's always going to give you an offensive baseline that is good enough to win. And then their defense takes it from there. They are minus 750 to win the NBA Finals. Minus 750. That is a pretty significant favorite going into this one. Vegas is not treating this one like it is necessarily a very close series. And what's even crazier about it is that the best odds for any outcome is Thunder in 5 at plus 210. And then Thunder in 4 in a sweep is the second best odds. So Vegas is saying that they think Thunder in 5 or Thunder in 4 is a near lock to be the outcome of this series. That tells you quite a bit. Now, one, Oklahoma City has been unbelievable at home. So you're going to get 3 home games in the first 5 games. And they just have not lost a lot at home throughout the course of the season, especially in the playoffs where they're winning by an average, I think, 20-something points. So you look at that, and then if you only have to get one of the 2 games on the road, 4 or 5 seems logical. After that, winning in 6 plus 440, winning in 7 plus 540. The Pacers, on the other hand, winning in 6 is plus 1120, and winning in 7 is plus 1200. So Vegas does not think this series is going 6 or 7 games. You can get incredible odds. If you're actually betting the Pacers winning in 6 is probably the best outcome. You can go ahead and buy it up to that plus 1150. But Vegas is kind of indicating that they would be shocked, blown away if that's how this series goes, that the Pacers win it. For MVP, I thought this was interesting. If you want to bet on Oklahoma City to win it, you might as well just bet on Shai as the MVP, because I don't know who else. It's hard for me to imagine anyone else winning MVP for Oklahoma City. Like, what would that mean? That the Pacers went all in on shutting Shai down, but they lost anyway because they gave everything else up? Who would it be? I mean, would it be J-Dub that wins it? I just have a hard time. You know, this isn't like the Pacers who have 2 players. Obviously, Siakam won the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. You have 2 players where it's not a surprise that the other guy can outshine. Shai is going to be the MVP. So rather than minus 750, if you think Oklahoma City is going to win, you might want to take Shai at minus 550 as MVP, because I think that bet's basically the same. Haliburton is plus 700 for MVP. Siakam plus 1900. I don't really love either one of those. Here's a bet I do like, though. Each team to score at least 100 points in every single game is plus 115. The Pacers have been held to below 100 points just one time. Now, this is the best defense that they're going to face, but I have a hard time thinking that the Pacers aren't going to get to 100. I still think that this is going to have a high tempo. The Pacers are good. I don't think this is going to be a thing where they're held to 85 points. But if you're opposite me, obviously you get the exact opposite odds on that one. So I thought that was an interesting one that I think the trend will continue. The Pacers will score, even if I don't know if they're going to win the series. If there's a game winner as time expires, plus 1,200. I kind of like this bet. This is an idiot bet, but we have seen this NBA playoffs, including with the Pacers, there be all of these shots at the buzzer, all of these games that have been close. So I kind of like that one. It's just a fun prop. Plus 1,200 is incredible odds. And then Haliburton's over-under in this one is 17.5 points per game. He's had 2 series where he's averaged 17.5 exactly. I think one was 17.5, one 17.4. I think with this defense, I would not be surprised if he struggles to hit that number as an average in the series. I think that a lot of their game plan is going to be to load up on him and to try to shut him down. And they have the guys to wear him down over time. So I would not be surprised for him to hit the under. And then similarly, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 33.5 points. We just heard what Caitlin had to say, and maybe it changes my perspective a little bit. She seems more optimistic that the Pacers are not going to concede Shai and just to let him to get going. I would bet there's at least 1, if not 2 games in the series where they make that move, where they say, hey, we're not overloading our help and putting ourselves into rotation. So let's see if we can guard him one-on-one. I think the answer will be no. I think that he will score on whoever it is that they put on him. But I think that 33.5 points, I think Shai is going to have a dominant final. Sometimes there's a series that lines up for a player's skill set, and I think this is one that is going to lend itself. So those were the bets as I went through FanDuel and just kind of looked at what is Vegas telling us about this one. I think they think Haliburton's going to struggle. Shai's going to have a great time or a great series. I think they look at this and say that Oklahoma City's probably wrapping this up in 4 or 5 games. So if you feel good about one of those and you want to play along, you can visit FanDuel.com, use that code ALLNBA. Cue that outro music for me, will you, producer Marissa? Blake is back from the road trip today, and he will be back on the show tomorrow to give our final preview of this NBA Finals. I know a lot of people have talked about not being interested in this one. Whenever I'm on NBA social media, I'm always blown away at how many people are really into wrestling and basketball. I think the fans that are really into wrestling, into whatever you call it, WWE or whatever it is these days, those people are probably not into this finals, and that's fine because the storylines, the overarching narratives of superstars and this or that, I think are below just the big names that we've seen in prior years. But I think if you're a basketball junkie who likes the nuances of the game, this series will actually be really fascinating for the reasons Caitlin outlined. This is an abnormal matchup, an abnormal offense and an abnormal defense. And I think that the chess match between the two teams will be fascinating. And I always say that every playoffs pushes the game in a new direction. I think this finals will push the game in a new direction because both teams do things that I think other teams are going to say, can we develop this? Can we cultivate this in our teams? So from that standpoint, I think this series will be very fascinating. Even if I don't really feel like it's going to be that competitive, I hope it is. But I think it'll be fascinating in terms of the game will be pushed in a new direction, and I'm kind of excited to follow along. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Make sure you follow Caitlin Cooper. She really, truly is one of the best. Just ask Tyrese Haliburton, always shouting her out, which I think is just so cool. That's an ultimate sign of respect. Throw me a like on this show. Make sure you're subscribed, and me and Legs will be back tomorrow to preview the finals. Hit the like button. We'll see ya.
We all silly like the